Hello everyone, today I'd like to talk to you about memory. Memory is something that we use in our day-to-day life for almost every task we do as humans. From starting our car, to driving to work, to remembering the name of somebody we just met. Memory is intrinsic in our ability to manage life. Now, what is memory? If we ask, most people would say something like, well, there's short-term and long-term memory, or, it's a memory of things that have happened to us, or stories that we tell. And all of those are partially correct. But the best way to think about memory is that it's like a library, but it's a really disorganized one. The human mind is not very good at storing information in orderly fashion so that when we're looking for it, we can find it. Now, memory is put into our library by encoding, so that means our brain takes the information of something we've encountered and codes it and then files it away into our memory library. Now, our memory library will store it, and then when we're ready to bring that memory up again, or we're looking for that memory, we go into our memory library and we find the book we're looking for. Now, the interesting thing about memory is that we know it's not very reliable, even if we are the ones who were there when a situation occurred. And so the first time we experience something, it'll be encoded in our memory. Now, when we remember that occurrence again, we may remember exactly what happened, but we may mix it up together with other memories. We may add pieces to it because we hear somebody saying something that happened. So, for example, we know that most people don't have memories prior to the age of 4, the age of fluent language development, because our memories are stored as people who use language so much using words and language to put them together and to describe what we're experiencing. Now, prior to that, most memory is stored in sensation, body sensation, those sorts of things. And so often when people are recounting memories from prior to gaining language, even though it may feel like these are accurate memories, it likely is a story that that person has heard over the years, or at some point somebody told the story and they picked up on bits and pieces of it, and their mind consolidated it into a memory in a way that now when they think about it, they actually do believe they have memories from being 2 years old or 1 year old, where we know scientifically that's highly unlikely, except in really exceptional cases. Now, the challenge with the fact that our memory is not as reliable as we'd like to think is that we can manipulate or be manipulated to believe that things happen or have happened that actually didn't. And this is why witness statements in trials and things are often not as reliable as we like to think they are. It's why people try to get witness statements as soon as an event has occurred, because if the person has time to talk about the event more than once, then they're going to start adding pieces and thinking about it a little more and being like, well, I saw the car come this way, but now I drive down that street and I see there's construction there, so there must have been construction when the accident happened. So now when I tell you the story of seeing the accident, I'm going to say, oh yeah, there was construction on that street when it happened. And I'm going to be 100% certain. And none of this is due to an intent to mislead or misdirect. We truly have shifted and adapted that thought, that memory in our mind to be representative of what we've added to it. And so that's why often people's memories differ so much from one another. They may differ from the first time they tell a story to the last time they tell the story, or there may be debate over something as serious as, I remember being abused by Aunt so-and-so, don't you remember? And the other person says, no, I don't remember any of that. and both people will be very convinced they're correct. Now, the different types of memory are open to differing amounts of interference by our constant re-encoding of the memory. So for example, a type of memory that doesn't rely on words or stories, such as procedural memory, which is basically how do you ride a bike, that type of memory is not subject to interference per se, because our conscious mind, or the part of our mind that assembles information into stories and something that makes sense, isn't involved. So we basically start the task and our body goes, yeah, I know how to do this, and off it goes. Now, memory based on things we've learned from other people, or we've learned from school, books, those sorts of things, just knowledge-based memory. That memory is less open to interpretation as we encode and re-encode it, because often we don't access it as much as some of the other memories we have. There's also not as much interpretation needed, as people aren't often going to retell and tell and retell how, Darwin's theory of evolution, for example. Basically it's consistent every time people learn it, so there's a shared knowledge of it. The part of our memory that is most open or vulnerable to reinterpretation is our episodic memory. That is the part of our brain that remembers events, things that have happened, things people say. And most of those memories are very vulnerable to us adding and taking things away. However, there are a few things that can occur in a memory or in association with a memory that can cause that memory to become more vivid. So for example, intense emotions associated with a memory. If you're someone who's had something traumatic happen, often when that memory comes back, whether you want it to or not, it comes back in such vivid detail that it is exactly the way that it happened, because the intensity of the attached emotion has really rooted that in your system. And often we're not looking to relive traumatic events or traumatic memories. So our brain will, pull them up when they're triggered, and instead of trying to remember detail like we might with, say, grandma's birthday party, we try and push it away, so we're not likely going to add anything to it. Repetition is another thing that obviously increases the accuracy of memory. So the more often we tell ourselves something exactly the same way, the more likely we are to remember it that way. Now, interestingly enough, if we hear the same information 3 times from 3 different people, we start to incorporate that information as if it's accurate and we've always known it. So repetition can work both for us and against us in terms of memory. Now, this kind of information is really important when we're considering therapy or different types of treatment, because there are certain types of treatments and therapies that psychologists no longer do because it's been found that they cause more harm than good. There's other types of therapy that a psychologist may not do because it causes difficulties when recounting the memory. And so over the next few episodes, I want to talk a little bit about these types of techniques and why we use them or don't use them. And if you're someone who's looking for that type of technique, what are some alternatives for you that we know are more accurate and more helpful? It's also important to note that if you're seeing a psychologist, myself or anyone else, no one is going to try and validate or judge whether or not your memory is authentic and completely correct. The only thing that matters to me as your therapist is that you recall this happening and it causes you distress, or it may be a story that causes you joy. I'm not going to pick it apart, and I'm not going to approach it as if you're not being truthful. We will work from the memory the way it is, and we'll work to improve your feeling and your overall quality of life. and work to make that memory less bothersome. So I'm looking forward to the next couple of discussions, and I believe that's all for now. Have a wonderful day.